Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We'll hear inspiring stories from educators, EdTech founders, AI experts, and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started.
And the way that she developed relationships first, and then a really engaging curriculum, and using instructional methods that are inquiry-based, focusing on deep conceptual understanding, honoring the student agency and giving them ownership so that they can choose their pathway, right? Doesn't mean that we don't provide important information, knowledge, and skills, but we want to give students, some agency to decide their learning path. And I think it starts at kindergarten.
That was Dr. Jennifer Chang Wathall. She's a long experienced teacher and author, and she joins me today to talk about her experience as an educational consultant and about her latest book called AI-Powered Pedagogy, Redefining Education. Now, her theories are a little bit controversial, but I love her passion and commitment to advancing education. So you're going to want to take notes during this one because we cover so much great practical stuff. So keep listening. Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron. I am joined today with Dr. Jennifer Chang Wathall. And she's an independent education consultant, author, and part-time instructor at the University of Hong Kong. With a rich background spanning over 30 years in international education, she's worked at various international schools, such as the South Island School, where my daughter was a student, the Island School in Hong Kong, and the United Nations International School in New York. Jennifer co-authored Student Companions for IB Diploma Mathematics courses published by the Oxford University Press, and her best-selling book, Concept-Based Mathematics, Teaching for Deep Understanding in Secondary Schools, has profoundly influenced secondary mathematics education. Jennifer's latest release is called AI-Powered Pedagogy, Redefining Education, and that debuted in June of last year, June 24. 2024. So, well, welcome to the show, Jennifer. I'm so glad we finally had a chance to sit down and do this.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Wow, that was a very generous introduction. I don't know who you were talking about, but thank you.
It's all true as far as I know. So, no, it's great to have you here and a privilege to talk with you about, innovation in education. So well, just from your bio, right? There's a bunch of places we could go, different directions we could drive this discussion. But, I had the opportunity to hear you talk about your latest book, an AI-powered pedagogy. And so I'd like to kind of focus there if we can.
Lovely. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so I want to talk about this, but before we dig too far into this, just the title of this, right? AI-powered pedagogy and redefining education, right?
Yeah.
It triggers me a little bit, right? In terms of, I like the sound of it, but it could also be potentially controversial. And I want to get some background here on how you went from this kind of concept-based mathematics curriculum to deciding to write about AI-powered pedagogy. So what brought you there? How did you make that transition and start writing about it?
Yep, great question, Eric, because my passion before was as a former teacher, as you've mentioned. I was in the classroom for 27 years and I've been in education for, I think this is my 35th year. I'd like to say I started at 12.
Yeah, exactly.
But I didn't. And so my passion is really, being in the classroom with students And so, how did I transition? My undergraduate was in mathematics, and I've been in maths education all of my life. I've consulted for the International Baccalaureate on various programs. And when I decided to do postgrad research, master's and doctorate, I thought, well, what's an area that I'm not very familiar with that I really want to learn more about and what the future is actually about and where we're going? So I thought, well, why don't I choose educational technology? I've always been an enthusiast of and an early adopter of a lot of different technologies. So when I was at South Island, interesting to hear that your daughter was there. I wonder if I taught her. We'll have to discuss later what year she was in,
Yes.
because I was there from 1995 to all the way up to 2006, I think 2007. So
Okay.
I was
So
there for,
yeah,
yeah.
she would not have been there when you were there. She came in 2012.
Oh, okay, we
Yeah.
missed it because I left Island School. So I joined Island School 2007 and left in 2017. So I could have still taught your daughter.
Yeah.
But when I was at South Island in the early 2000s and late 1990s, they were so innovative in terms of embracing all the new technologies. So, at the time, we didn't have a one-to-one system where every student could bring their own device, but we had this massive trolley with different laptops that I could book, for the lessons. So in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I booked this trolley for my maths lessons, and we would explore like dynamic geometry software. We would use different inquiry exploration activities using the internet. And so I was really excited about the potential of technology and how it can really enhance learning and focus on deep understanding, deep conceptual understanding, so that students can apply and transfer whatever they're learning in the classroom to all the different contexts, that's relevant in their lives. So my master's and doctorate led me then to really research educational technology. And I feel that AI is just under that huge umbrella term. So I'm focused on AI educational technology for educators and teachers and learners. And so I feel like educational technology is that huge umbrella term where, AI is one of those tools that we can use to serve students to focus on deep conceptual understanding and to really enhance and engage and motivate learners. Yeah, that's one of the reasons.
Okay.
And that's the reason why I transitioned from concept-based maths, even though I still do a lot of consulting work with developing mathematics programs with different international schools. But now I'm moving into a lot of AI-powered pedagogy. And the reason I'm interested to hear, Eric, why you think this is controversial too. I'm really interested to hear. But one of the reasons was, so here's the book. Here is a shameless plug.
Oh,
Here is the
good.
book. Available on Amazon. And in my book, I have this table of the pedagogical mistakes that you can make with AI. And I saw so many people using AI tools for the classroom in a way that was not enhancing learning. It was basically doing the same traditional things, but faster. And we really want to transform and redefine what learning looks like for students. So if I can read out these pedagogical mistakes that I
Yeah,
noticed
go
in
for it.
studying the book. So the first one was teachers were generating inane worksheets. And they were, focusing on drill and kill and low order thinking skills. And I thought, what? Okay, AI tools can do that in seconds, but why would we want to continue to, generate inane worksheets? Number two, generating standardized tests and those kind of lower order, relying on rote memorization, multiple choice standardized testing.
Yep.
So I saw a lot of AI tool usage based on that. I also saw in the beginning, now I'm hoping with the new releases, especially like Claude has just released Claude for Education, a lot of the tools are now releasing models for university students that don't focus on giving answers, but guiding the thinking. And so, this was something that I'm hoping that we encourage with all students of all ages. But
And you're talking
before,
about Socratic questioning there?
yes,
Yeah.
Socratic, guiding the thinking and not just giving away the answer. And so my next mistake was, don't use AI tools to work out answers to math problems, because you're robbing, the student of that problem solving process and the
Yep.
critical thinking. Number 4, so I have 6 in total. So number 4 was, this is something that's very controversial. And so I hope you pick me up on it. Using AI tools as a tutor, one-to-one tutor for students in class in a school situation. And the reason why I say that's a mistake is because I believe the classroom situation should be a social constructivist learning environment where it's engaging and, students are bouncing ideas off each other. And if we're going to have students sitting by themselves on an individual computer, working with the tutor, then what's the point of coming to school? What value are we actually adding? And I'm not saying that there's not a time and place to use AI tools as a tutor, especially in terms of equity around the world and, outside of class time and outside of school. But, using AI as a tutor in class, to me, I'm going to say this, it's just lazy teaching.
Oh,
I know.
she went there. Oh,
I want to be controversial today. I want to push the boundaries.
good.
Number 5, so I've got 2 more. Number 5 is using AI to continue to deliver long, boring lectures. Using that transmission style where we think of, students as empty vessels that we're just trying to fill with information and not engaging their intellect and developing their critical thinking. And then number 6, I think this kind of summarizes everything. Don't use AI tools to create teacher-centered learning experiences and lessons, because we should be focused on the student. So we want to be creating lessons and designing inquiry learning experiences, focusing on the learner at the center and then developing that. So not focusing on the teacher, and the teacher is the sage on the stage, but more that we are not even the guide on the side, but teachers, we are meddlers in the middle, and learning is really messy.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
very interesting. So, well, you hit on so many of the things I was hoping we would surface here in
Yeah.
this. So when we talk about pedagogy, right? So
Mm,
this is why, that AI powered pedagogy, and then you
mhm.
combine that with redefining education, right?
Yes.
So this is, and you hit on the very first thing right away, was this fear that's out there that a lot of folks are using AI simply to more efficiently do what we've always done, which
Mhm.
hasn't proven to be very effective, right? In standardized tests and say, I love that concept of, filling the vessel, right? Oh, they're just empty. We've got to, give them knowledge, right?
Yes.
So tie together for me though how AI pedagogy maybe is related to concept-based learning
Mm,
style. Is there
yes.
a way that
Yeah.
that kind of correlates?
There is actually, and AI-powered pedagogy is basically harmonizing effective AI principles that we all know from different institutions that are well researched, and harmonizing that with good, effective pedagogical principles. And so in my book, I outline 5 AI principles that we should be adhering to, but really ensuring that that is harmonized with 6 pedagogical principles, which include teaching for deep conceptual understanding, inquiry-based learning, collecting evidence of learning as a continuous process. That's basically assessment. I'm trying to move away from the word assessment, because as soon as you say assessment to teachers, you can see their blood pressure just rising straight away. The anxiety that comes with that. And
Yeah.
I've moved away from those terms formative and summative as well, because formative assessment can be summative and summative can be formative. So I've kind of reframed assessment as it's a continuous collection of student learning, and it's sustained, and it could be qualitative and quantitative, and it gives us evidence to help us be flexible and adaptive in terms of our instruction, but also it informs the student, the learner, of where they are in their journey and where they need to go. So AI-powered pedagogy basically harmonizes AI principles with good pedagogical principles. And that's what I say as a framework is what we should be following when we're looking at AI powered pedagogy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Take me back to formative versus
Oh,
summative. I
yes.
want to understand this better, why you're saying there's not really a distinction there.
Okay, thank you for picking this up because this is very controversial as well. And, traditionally in education, we've always called it either diagnostic, formative, and summative. And what happens when we put those boxes on those labels is formative seems to be everything in the middle of a unit. Let's say we've got a unit of study that lasts 6 weeks, and then summative all of a sudden is that assessment at the very end. But I'm saying, well, why can't we be collecting evidence of learning all the way throughout, and all of those data points that could be qualitative or quantitative be used as some kind of report? It doesn't have to be at the end. It doesn't have to be a summative task at the end. Why can't it be formative and summative?
Mm.
Does that make sense?
It it does. So let me put it in my terms, because
Yes,
immediately what I thought of, because this is how my brain works, is game technology, right?
yes,
The way games like take you through a level. So there's no set time for how long it may take you to progress through that level, but the
yes,
game is constantly, there's certain things you have to accomplish as you
yes,
go through, right? So
yes,
it's measuring your progress, and, it's challenging you in, different ways. You have to get through here, you got to get through there, you got to solve this problem, you got to solve that problem, right? You progress, but at
yes,
some point you level up, right?
yes,
And if you think of that
yes,
as kind of the summative piece, is, it's kind of told you, okay, you've achieved this level now, and so we're gonna move on. And to me,
yes,
it's more subtle than, say this kind of moment in time where it just says, okay, now we're going to test you on all these things. It's like, well,
yes,
no, I've been doing them all along. So
yes,
I know
yes,
I've done them, right? You kind of
yes,
gotten credit for them. Now we move on, right? So
yes,
yeah, we progress, if
yes,
you will.
yes,
So, okay, I like
yeah,
that blending, merging of the terminology and saying, yeah,
yes,
why do we
yes,
need to put labels on these?
yes,
Measure progress and know when we
exactly,
transition to the next
exactly.
level. Yeah,
Exactly. And
level up.
growth,
Yeah.
right? It's about individual growth too. So, how is a student or a learner going to know their growth if they're not getting that feedback and showing evidence and
Mm,
giving, teach the evidence during the unit? It's too late at the end,
right.
isn't it? It's too late.
Well, and
Yeah.
then it's also kind of pass fail, right? You
Yes.
you hit that problem where it's like, oh, I didn't help you along the way. I
Yes.
gave you this time period to go through the learning exercises, and then I tested you. And
Yes.
you either made it or you didn't, right? It's
Exactly.
like, right, but if we're measuring all along, we
Yes.
can help you and we can
Yes.
intervene, and yes, as necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah.
cool. All right, let's let's jump a little bit into ethics. You talk a lot about
Ooh.
ethics in the book and what's
Yes.
ethical use of AI. So
Yes.
this is another one of those. There's a lot of talk about it, a lot of people talking about ethics, but
Mm,
what does it mean to you, and how do you kind of wrap that in the book, and
yeah.
help teachers understand what it means to teach ethical use of AI?
This is a really, I think, huge issue with schools, especially the schools that I partner with, and what I'm hearing in terms of how the students are using AI. And I teach
They're
part-time
cheating. That's what they're
yeah,
doing, right?
that's what, yes, exactly. And of course, students perceive to be cheating if they're not given guidelines and taught about AI digital literacy. So I teach part-time at the University of Hong Kong, and we have a big session about ethics and using AI at the beginning of our course because we want to encourage our students to use all the tools available to help their understanding, to enhance their learning, and they end up creating an artifact and a project. And we want to guide that process, right? So we really focus on the process of learning. And I think what students have found challenging is when they're not given that guidance and they're not given AI digital literacy lessons and tools and expectations, then that's when they're accused of cheating. And I feel it's not their fault, because they haven't been told and given the guidelines. For me, ethics really means about understanding, well, in the academic world, academic integrity and responsibility. So it even goes down to the fine minutiae, I think, of citing, and ensuring that I encourage my students to have a resource package where it has the AI prompts and the AI tools that they've used. Because sometimes I feel it's impossible to cite every single sentence and every single paragraph. And we want to focus on the process of learning anyway, and the process of how they created that project or that artifact. So I teach my students in terms of ethics and responsible use. Where is your resources package where you've outlined the different AI tools that you've used? What are some of the prompts? How have you edited and modified it? And how have you fact checked? We know that the large language models still hallucinate. And so how do you actually know, or how have you verified that information? You can't just
Yeah.
take whatever the large language model says and as truth.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a great opportunity to develop more critical thinking when we're using AI tools, because they have to fact check through different sources and really look at credible sources and look at different frameworks for checking, right?
Yeah.
Facts, yeah, discerning, facts and truth from, the hallucinations that large
Yeah.
language models come up with. And so I found after we gave our students that AI digital literacy lesson, like just at the beginning of the course, the assignments and the projects that I was getting were not as, let's say, littered with weird, phrases that large language models come up with, or there are really common words now that I avoid because, I avoid the word tapestry and weave. There are these common words that all large language models like to use. And so I noticed that all of my students' work, actually, I could see that they were editing and modifying, and I could see their thinking. And I think it's important that you know your students too. So that's probably in teaching the most important aspect. When newly qualified teachers ask me, what's the best advice you could give me? I say it's like real estate. It's relationships, relationships, relationships. Just like our location is the most important thing in real estate.
Yeah.
And so knowing your students, building that strong relationship of trust so that they don't feel a need to hide or to cheat or to do a disservice to themselves in terms of their learning process. And I really try to promote, and this is in the ideal world, that intrinsic motivation to just want to learn for the sake of learning, the
Yeah.
love of learning.
All right. Well, let's talk about that because this is part of the challenge and what I hear. I get an ear to the, you know, teachers and I listen to a lot of forums and stuff. And what we
Mhm.
hear all the time is the students just want to get through and get a grade, right?
Yes.
They're not motivated to learn,
Yes. Yep.
right? This is a stamp, right?
Yes.
I got to pass that exam, that standardized exam, that whatever, right? So I
Yes.
can get a grade and I can move on. And they
Yes.
don't really care. So
Yes.
how do we, and I mean, my personal opinion is you have to start this pretty young, but how do
Yeah.
we instill
Yeah.
that kind of motivation, that intrinsic motivation to say, I don't want AI to do it for me because I
Yes.
want the mental exercise of going through this. So how do you address that concern, right? The AI is just making us dumb and the kids want it that way. They're happy
Yes.
with that. I didn't have to do the work. Let AI do the work for me. I got the grade and the grade is all that mattered, not the learning.
You've hit the nail on the head, Eric, with just what you said. I only care about the grade. So there are two aspects to this question, I think, that you're posing. One is a systemic problem and issue with assessment. Why do we have to give a grade? I know quite a few
You are
schools.
controversial.
I
Yeah.
am. I know lots of schools, let's say even up to grade 9, 10, don't give a grade.
Yep.
And they're radical, progressive, but they're finding all that qualitative feedback they're giving their students and reporting to parents, they're not getting any complaints. So the systemic problem is why have we all of a sudden put this extrinsic carrot here in terms of the grade? And that's why students are demotivated, don't want to learn. They don't care about that one number that's going to summarize all of their strengths and talents and who they are as a human being. And I liken that number. Let's say, Eric, I gave you 84%. You know, what does that mean actually? Is that an A? Is that a D? Did you start with 20% and go to 84? Or did you start at 100 and went to 84? Like there's so many qualitative things we don't know about that 84%. And it's like the weather in Hong Kong. We've had a little bit of up and down weather, right? I've noticed like yesterday, was it, or the day before, it was raining. And in the same day, the sun came out in the afternoon. Then it was humid for 99%. Then the humidity dropped to 70%. So in that one day, how could I say, oh, Hong Kong's weather was 17 degrees? Because it wasn't. It was 25 in some parts of the
Yeah.
day. It was 12 or maybe 15 in other parts. It was 99% humidity. It was 70% humidity, all in the same day. So how can one grade, one letter represent you as a human being? And
Yeah.
so that's a systemic problem. Okay. Now the other way, so that's in an ideal world. You know, teachers say to me, but we're not living in a world where we can't have grades. You know, we want our students to go to university. There is a
So
grade.
why can't we?
Yes, I like that. Well, that's what I'm pushing for. So I
Yes.
do, you know, consult for organizations, and I'm pushing for qualitative portfolio based. And you might have heard of the Mastery Consortium, Mastery Transcript Consortium, MTC. They were started in the US, and there are a group of schools, hundreds of schools that have gotten together and said, you know, we don't want to rely on just those standardized tests. We want a portfolio for our students, and we're going to use this portfolio to help our students enter university. So there is a small movement, you know, moving away from the grade, the summative grade and percentages, and using that as the extrinsic carrot, which we know demotivates students and has turned students
Yeah.
off learning altogether. Now, the second part, how do we really cultivate intrinsic learning in our students? I was talking to a wonderful educator yesterday. She's been in education for over 40 years, and she's consulting for a school in Hong Kong here. It was such a lovely story, and you'll know her. I'll tell you her name later after the
Okay.
podcast. And because she's so wonderful. And she was saying that when she went to consult for the school, the principal said to her, oh, the students are really demotivated. They're not, you know, they're not very engaged, and you're going to find lots of behavior management issues. But this educator focuses on inquiry-based learning, putting learning into a context that will engage students. She gives students agency by giving them choice of what project or topic they want to work on.
Mhm.
And she said she didn't find the students like that at all. She said in her lessons, they were so engaged, they loved coming. And she said in the past, she's taught students maybe 20 years ago, and they say they still remember the course that she taught them when she was visiting the school,
Mm.
because of that, you know, the way that that course was designed and the way that she developed relationships first, and then a really engaging curriculum, and using instructional methods that are inquiry based, focusing on deep conceptual understanding, honoring the student agency and giving them ownership so that they can choose their pathway, right? Doesn't mean that we don't provide important information, knowledge, and skills, but we want to give students, you know, some agency to decide their learning path. And I think it starts at kindergarten. I think it starts as soon as what you said. I think as soon as the child is born, you know, play is really important, and play is part of learning. And we need to, you know, be ensuring that we include that so that students do want to come to lessons, and they love coming to your lesson, and they
Yeah.
love learning.
All right, let's take a quick break. I want to take a moment and plug the human intelligence movement. This is not a paid advertisement. This is just me wanting to show support for an organization that I think is doing great work. So the human intelligence movement, their mission is to ensure that the students all have what they need to thrive in an AI world. And so I want you to join. There's a link in the show notes. Check that out, the Human Intelligence Movement. All right. See, that was quick. Now back to our conversation with Jennifer as we talk about her framework for survive, strive, thrive, and arrive in AI-powered pedagogy. So keep listening. Fascinating stuff coming. Yeah. See, I feel like we're harmonizing here because this is, well, I've had several guests on the show who have talked about no grades, and a couple of them have talked about no grades, meaning no grade levels either,
Okay. Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
you stop the time box that says, oh, you have to level up, at this age with this group, all at the same time, everybody moves up. And I say, why? Right?
Mm,
We
mm,
learn at different pace.
mm,
I might
mm,
be great in math and bad at reading or whatever. I need a little
mm.
more time there. I need less time here. I can progress. When I'm ready, let me level up, right?
Yeah.
We don't all
Yeah.
have to learn at the same pace, but the
Yes.
school structure,
Mm,
right, is built around this organization that says, oh, no, no, you're in year one and you're going to
yes.
learn this curriculum and
Yes.
this stuff, and you're going to pass this test in order to progress to year two, and you're going to
Mm,
do this by this definition in this time box,
mm,
based on your age. And I
mm,
think that's broken too. So,
mm.
I like this no grades
Yes.
concept
Yes.
to
Yes.
redefine things. So yeah, there's so many interesting things in all of what you were saying there that resonate, with me
Mm.
on how we teach. So let's be let's go practical here, a little bit
Oh.
practical. I know you've got some practical stuff in the book, and I like this concept that you had around the survive, strive, thrive, and
Oh,
arrive, right? So
yes.
your framework there for how you adopt AI. So give me a
Yes.
like a practical example of a challenge that teachers may face in that very first phase and survive, some of the challenges they face and how you overcome those to move on into strive.
Into the
You got an
next stage.
example?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up because this model really can be adopted in all situations. So I released this model at the beginning of COVID. And it was basically about educational technology or technology adoption. COVID happened, all the schools are shutting down. What tools do we use? What LMS? How are we even going to get online and see our students? And so
Yep.
that was the survive stage. So as a
Okay.
practical example of, what tools do we use? And then this happened with AI. So when AI tools were released, I think it was November 2023
Yep.
was the first one. And then I found out about it in January 2024. And I thought, well, everybody was in panic stations. What are we going to do about our students? What tools do we use? Oh, and then we've got probably a majority of teachers, I would say 70, 80% that I've heard from research that are still resistant and still think that AI tools rob you of critical thinking and intellect. And
Yeah.
so that's why we've got to be so careful about how we teach our students and how we use AI tools, as a partner. Or as Ethan Mollick says, I don't know if you've read his book called Co-Intelligence, and it's like it's a partner that we use. It's a thought partner. Imagine, we can bounce ideas off a really experienced teacher. They may not be factually correct all the time, but they can give you some ideas for you to be able to use, and a springboard. So the firefighting stage is really about choosing the AI tool and trying to navigate, what it is, just trying to find out what it is. Moving into Strive is about more education. And Strive, it's very early on. It's only the second stage in the four-stage cycle, but I feel you have to set up some kind of guidelines for teachers and students early on. And I found that some schools have waited so long, like a year's gone, where all the problems and issues and challenges have arisen, and then they're trying to address it after the fact. I think we need to be, co-creating guidelines very early on in the process, once we understand what it is and what tools, we're going to use. So after Survive, we move into Strive. And that's when we give some teacher professional development so that teachers then are engaged with the different tools and how to use it to enhance learning. I was also talking about here the academic integrity, ethics protocols. And in my book, I talk about using the design thinking process to develop an evolving unified AI policy. And I say, yes, this is really early on. How can we actually develop a policy? But it's evolving. So if we have some kind of template at the beginning in the strive stage, where as we go through the stages, and all 4 stages are cyclical, and you can keep going back and around and back and forth and around. Every time a new AI tool comes out, you probably go back to survive, or some new announcement comes out in terms of AI, because the news at the moment, it's every day. We're actually inundated with the AI news. So trying to keep up to date is a challenge. And so that strive stage, trying to establish that evolving unified AI policy using the design thinking process. I'm a huge advocate of design thinking and starting off with empathy, ensuring that all of your stakeholders in the community are involved at the beginning to collect that data. And then we don't need everybody involved to create the policy, but you need to kind of garner different opinions from different stakeholders so that you can move forward and try and develop this evolving unified AI policy.
Yeah.
Then from Strive, do you want me to go to Strive or?
Well, so
Yeah.
I'm still struggling a little bit with, and I know a lot of schools are struggling with this too. And you mentioned, right, there's still a lot of teachers who are resistant to
Yes.
doing this. And it
Yes.
seems like you can't get out of Survive into Strive really
Yeah.
without overcoming some of that resistance, right? You've
Yes.
got to
That's
get them
right.
on board that
Correct.
this can be used, that this can drive innovation even,
Yes.
right? That it's
Yes.
not just a new way of more efficiently doing what we've done before, but getting
Yes.
people in that mindset that the model's breaking, right?
Yes.
There's a new way that we can do things, and you've got to be open to it. So how do you deal with that resistance? How do you get them to to get it and to not be so
Yeah.
afraid, right? Afraid of the
Yes.
hallucinations and all
Yes.
the misinformation too that's out there that from say back in November 2023, yes,
Yeah.
hallucinations and bias was a real problem, but it's
Mm,
so much less of a problem
it is.
now. But people
Yes.
got this in their head. Oh, it's going to give me false information back,
Yeah.
so I can't trust it at all ever. And
Yes.
saying, well, not ever, because
Mm,
every
mm,
new version that comes out, every new model is getting better and better at this, and the tools, now allowing you to put the content in there you want it to answer from, so you can
yes.
control a lot more, reduce the hallucinations. But how do you convince teachers they
Yes.
can do this and they can do it ethically and with a positive learning experience, an enhanced learning experience?
I would say, Eric, that change management is probably 99% of my role as a consultant, whether that's to do with AI, whether it's to do with developing mathematics curriculum and designing engaging learning experiences, or whether it's just concept-based curriculum and instruction for all discipline areas. So change management is key.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have the leadership team of a school institution on board with you first. And so if they are on board and they've done the research and they've gone through some professional development, then it needs to be whole school planned professional development. There needs to be a professional development plan that addresses concerns. So one of the first things that I do in all of my workshops is we actually put all of the challenges and concerns at the beginning of the workshop. And then we don't necessarily answer them at the beginning. Some of them are answered if they're quick ones, but we post them. And then by the time on one of my visits, let's say we've had a few visits, or by the end of the 2 days, teachers will answer those concerns themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you see the huge shift in mindset. Of course, we're going to come in with some concerns about AI tools, robbing us of critical thinking and thinking that it's going to substitute our intellect and create lazy teachers and lazy thinkers. But I really think it's about, okay, let's look at that. And let's look at some research as well, because actually some research papers have come out and said, oh, it's actually detrimental to some critical thinking. But I think that's because we haven't taught the students to use the tools correctly and about AI digital literacy. So, let's get those concerns and then let's go on a journey together. As we know, it's a journey to really, I think, address those resistant educators. And I was resistant. We've all been resistant at some stage. I think as human beings, we're born with this innate resistance to huge change. But rather than saying resistance to change, I always like to focus on the word evolving. Like as human beings, through history, we've always evolved to adapt to our environment and to the conditions so that we can thrive in our environment. And so if AI is present and it's everywhere, ubiquitous, then we need to evolve and adapt so that we can serve our students and prepare them better for the future. And so they can actually then contribute to society in the most positive way, because that's our role as teachers.
Yeah.
We're preparing our students to be good citizens of the world. That's how I feel.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm playing counterpoint with you here on some stuff.
Sure.
So one of the other arguments I hear out there is I call this the pure academic
Yeah.
argument, right? That we
Mhm.
can't mess with pedagogy and learning without proper study, peer-reviewed research, and I mean, I've even seen there was a book that I read about ed tech stuff, and they made the case that change in education moves at a glacier
Yes.
pace, and they were making the argument that that's exactly how it should be, that it should move forward very, very, very slowly. We should not change quickly to evolve and adapt to a rapidly changing world around us. That again, and the book, even the authors went on to like poo poo any like online forums and any place where teachers were sharing best practice and information. This was horrifying to them because these were not, say, academically researched over a period of years and peer reviewed and tested and proved and then adopted. Right? That's the only
Mhm.
way you could get there, that it takes probably 5 years to make a pedagogical change. And I was kind of taken aback at kind of, but this is the pure academic view. So have you run into this where you've hit educators who just say, oh, no, this is untested. We can't experiment on our students with pedagogical changes like you're describing?
I have not come across teachers that have actually used academic research to not use AI tools. However, I do have opinions about this, if I may share.
Sure.
So, there are so many different camps when it comes to pedagogical approaches. One is the direct instruction camp, where they believe that we should be transmitting information and knowledge as our main way of teaching and learning. And then there's another camp where there's inquiry-based learning, right? Where you want students to have agency to explore different concepts with some scaffolding and guidance. That's one of the, I think, misconceptions about inquiry-based learning. Now, that's kind of a false dichotomy, but each camp will give you thousands of studies to support either view. And so what is my opinion about research? I can find any research, to support anything, to be honest. And I'm a
Yeah.
researcher myself. And so I'm always not skeptical, but I'm very careful. I would, if I was going to look at a research paper, I would, to be honest, trust a teacher who's been teaching for 40 years in a collaborative environment and learn a lot more through the classroom experiences of what has worked and what has not worked, let's say in terms of behavioral management, than a paper that said that we should be using strong disciplinary, you know, approaches
Yeah.
to our class, yeah. So we have to be discerning. Like any fact, it's like reading something in the paper. Like we have to make that judgment based on our knowledge and experience, whether we think that that peer-reviewed research paper is going to support what you think and you found actually really works in the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's tricky.
it
It
is.
is. Yeah.
It
Tricky
is.
navigating this. So, all right. So give me some examples. So you're consulting. So you've
Yeah,
got the book, you've got this framework, you're out there trying to make this happen in some schools, I assume.
yeah.
So share some experience. Have you got some stories of where schools are trying and who's gotten all the way through to thrive?
Yeah. Well, you know that we start with survive, strive, thrive, and arrive.
Or
But
arrive,
I
yeah,
always
okay.
say that we go, it's a cyclical kind of framework. So you could be at survive at any stage through the entire journey, and that's perfectly normal. And in my book, I talked about how I talked to a head of school. He just started at the school and he was so overwhelmed, so flustered with everything. And as soon as I showed him this four-stage model and I said, you know, you're here at Survive and it's okay, it really put him at ease that it's okay that we actually feel overwhelmed and we don't know what we're doing because there's just so many new tools out there. And so even if schools go through this cycle and they might in a momentary place, go to arrive at arrive, basically, they will at any time they could go back to thrive, strive, or survive. And I think that you don't ever arrive and stay there. It's not a destination, this
Mm,
framework, it's a journey that tries to I think it values and supports the different emotions that you feel when you're going through any kind of change management or
yeah.
change issue. I think change transition as well. The thrive is really about trying to enhance the pedagogy. So not doing the same things faster. Sometimes I find in strive, it's about teachers, they realize, oh, this is going to save me so much time. So I can continue to do the same things faster. That's okay. If that's where they are in their journey, let them, stay in that strive until they really can master what the AI tools can do. And then the next stage is, well, okay, rather than creating worksheets or standardized tests, how can we use AI to really brainstorm some innovative approaches and projects and learning experiences for our students?
Mm,
Yeah. So in terms of schools, yes, we always start off unpacking the design thinking process first. I think that's key to any innovation, whether it's AI tools, whether it's ed tech, whether it's even COVID protocols and procedures, anything, any challenge that we have to go through, we start with the design thinking process.
mm,
And so it's wonderful to be able to work with, sometimes it's leaders, sometimes it's teachers, sometimes it's educators from all different schools in the region. For example, in Spain, I'll work with the American International Schools of Spain, and they'll send representatives and we unpack, just some of the ideas from the book, because a lot of the teachers that come are not necessarily, not in Spain, but in general, a lot of the teachers come just very curious. Oh, I'm an early years teacher. I teach 3-year-olds. How am I going to use AI with 3-year-olds? And they walk away so affirmed in their beliefs because I say to them, play, focusing on understanding is really important. We're not going to put screens in front of 3-year-olds. They're going to have plenty of time later in
yeah.
their life. But how can we use AI as this really great thought partner that's going to give you the most engaging activities, learning experiences, even going outside, even using manipulatives in the natural environment? Where am I going to get all these ideas from? But your thought partner is going to give them to you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, a great example of that, actually, one of the guys who was on my show, Phil Alcock, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he does AI and project-based learning.
lovely.
And that's exactly, I mean, it's simplifying it, oversimplifying it, but basically what he's saying is, yeah, it's your thought partner in being creative, in coming up with projects that really tie to the curriculum and learning objectives. So,
Yes.
yeah, well, I think so. so I'll go off on just a little tangent. So I met somebody recently, talking to them. They had just transitioned from corporate for years, a lifetime, a career in corporate, to teaching.
Mhm.
And I was asking them, and so they were from tech and themselves, and so I thought, oh, this would be a great kind of example here. Oh, this is somebody who will have innovated in the classroom. No, they immediately explained to me their process of putting together 4-hour lectures for their students, and you watched my jaw drop. I was like, you just come into teaching and you're doing 4-hour lectures. And
Yeah.
so I asked him about AI, and he was one of those who complete misconception about how AI works. He wanted it to be Google, right? I put
Mm.
in one prompt, I get an answer back. If that answer is wrong or it's not what I wanted, then this tool is of no use to me and I throw it
Mm.
away. And
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I was just like, oh my gosh. And these are the people we're putting in front of our students to teach
exactly.
them. Um, and he's
Exactly.
such a smart guy. I mean, I've known him for years, and he's an intelligent man. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun talking to him.
The thing
It's
is,
like,
Eric,
oh, yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. So I blame his teacher training.
Yes.
It's
I blame
about
the university. Exactly.
yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because, we tried to create a really innovative program for our master's students, and I used to teach on the PGDE too, where we're focusing on different pedagogical strategies aside from lecture style transmission method.
Mm,
So he's obviously finished teacher training where they've said this is the most important instructional method that you must employ. Right.
yeah.
So he doesn't know. So I would love to work with him,
Yeah.
or
I know.
if, yeah,
Yeah.
just,
He thought active learning was giving them a YouTube video. It's like,
no.
no, that's
Yeah.
just another
And
form of passive
oh,
learning.
exactly. That's so
Yes.
passive. The other thing you
Yeah.
picked up was about prompting and him thinking, oh, you think it's Google and you get the wrong answer or the answers that you get are terrible. I think you've read in my book that I don't like to call it prompt engineering because it's not engineering, it's not science and maths at all. It's language and
Mm,
communication. So I've developed a model that's basically based on the 5 canons of rhetoric because it's about communication, public speaking, and it should be an iterative process. You're having a conversation with your thought partner. If you're
mm,
having a conversation with this wonderful, experienced teacher, you're not going to ask them one question and they give you one question back and it's the perfect answer. You're going to have a dialogue. You're going to brainstorm. You're going to pose questions back and forth to each other, and then you're going to use their ideas and adapt it, modify it, edit it, transfer it to another context, right? That's more relevant to your students.
mhm.
So, it's an ongoing conversation, that the prompting. And so I'm not a great believer of those prompt libraries that you have where you have to look up
Yeah. Yeah.
hundreds of pages. I don't know what you think about that, Eric.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. And it's also one of the arguments I've used kind of for AI is that you can't effectively use AI unless you can communicate.
Yes.
Right? So it doesn't replace the ability to communicate because you have to communicate with it in order to get it to have that dialogue with you, to be
Exactly.
that thought partner. You have to be able to express yourself and you have to be able to communicate clearly what your ideas are because AI doesn't have any ideas,
Exactly.
right? It,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, it only regurgitates things. And yes,
Mm.
so anyway, yeah, I think it's a key part of the understanding of how we should use AI. And I did have somebody else recently who I was telling him to try Perplexity for
Yes, I
research
love
stuff. I
perplexity.
love
Yes.
Perplexity. And
Yes.
he came back like the next day and said, yeah, no, it didn't work. I said, what did
Oh,
you do? He
yeah.
put a 3-word prompt in and didn't like the answer he got back. I was like,
Oh, that's
no,
not
it's a conversation. You got to have a conversation with
exactly.
it. And he's just looking at me like,
Exactly.
huh? What do you mean? I was like, yeah, you missed the whole point. So
I watched, I don't know if you've watched the TED Talk by one of the co-founders of Perplexity. If you haven't, please watch it, because he talks about one of the reasons why he created this wonderful tool was because he was curious himself and he wanted to promote curiosity and people to ask questions.
yes.
I just loved it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll have to watch it. It's just
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, there's another reoccurring theme, and inquiry-based learning is basically curiosity, right?
Yeah,
That's what it is. It's we're developing curiosity and telling students, be curious, ask questions. What do you want to know? Right?
yes,
When you seek knowledge, then the whole system starts to work when you're
yes,
seeking it.
yes,
But yes, when we sit you down in a chair and say we're going to fill the vessel, right?
yeah,
It's no
yeah,
longer it's well, I also talk about pull versus push, right?
yes,
Right?
yeah,
A teacher lecturing is a push,
yes,
right? You got to be receptive to it, right? Versus a
mhm,
pull, which is inquiry based, right?
yeah,
It's I'm seeking, give me, I want to know, right? So I'm looking for it.
mm,
Anyway, that's we got to get more of our education to a pull than a
absolutely,
push. Yeah.
absolutely. I didn't realize we were so aligned, Eric. That's wonderful.
Oh, I sensed it just from
Did
listening to
you?
you talk before. That's why I was like, oh, I got to get you on the show because yes, we are going to be buddies here on
Yeah.
this stuff. Absolutely. All right,
Mm,
so we're coming to an hour already,
wow.
and we could talk for days, I think. But I want to talk future. Where are we going from here? You've written a book, you're doing this consulting. What
Mm,
happens now in the next 3 to 5 years? Is there another book coming, Jennifer?
there
What's
is. Are
Oh,
you
there
reading my
is.
mind? Are you reading my mind? I never thought if you would have asked me probably in 2014, what would I be doing for the rest of my life? I would have said, I'm going to stay head of maths at Island School until I retire. And then something has just taken over inside me. And I wrote my concept-based mathematics book because I just wanted to put my thoughts and ideas down and maybe try to have a bigger impact than just the students in front of me.
Mm,
And so with this book, the AI powered pedagogy, I said there were just so many mistakes people were making with it. I felt compelled to really just put all my ideas down, make it really practical, lots of figures and diagrams and using design thinking so that it was a nice little playbook almost for
mm,
teachers. And then we've talked about assessment, how there's systemic problems with assessment and giving grades. So the book that I'm currently working on is AI powered assessment. I don't know whether I will be, titling that book as such. Let's see. The title is yet to be
okay.
determined, but it's really about assessment and AI and looking at some of the systemic issues. I'm holding a lot more conferences. I have associates under my consulting. So I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by really enthusiastic, motivated, wonderful educators who have decided to join my consultancy. So we'll be running
Nice.
a lot more conferences so that we can have hopefully reach and connect with more people around the world. That's
Yeah.
my plan. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is great. And of course, this is why I do the show as well, right? This is a platform for folks to tell their stories, to share what
Yeah.
they're doing, and hopefully connect with more people who are like-minded
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's some folks who are going to be inspired by what you're doing
Thank you.
and maybe they're going to connect with you
Yes.
and say,
Lovely.
yeah, I've got this piece I'm trying to do over here. Maybe you can help me. Maybe I can help you. And I think that's what we all have to do.
Yes.
Of course, the other thing that I love is you're doing. Right?
Mm,
You
mm,
didn't sit on the sidelines and pull your hair out and go, oh, people are doing it wrong. Right?
mm,
You got out there, and this is just a drum beat of my message as a
yeah.
podcaster and educator too is go do, go
Yes.
try, go
Yes.
don't sit and complain. As
Exactly.
I say, three types of people. There's
Mm,
people who make things happen. There's people who watch things happen, and there's people
mm.
who wonder what happened. Right? And we need a lot more educators to be in that first group,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
A little bit risk taking,
Yes.
go, do,
Yes.
try, don't accept. And AI is moving too fast really to
Mm,
be even just watching. If you're
Yes, I
watching,
agree.
you're already falling behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, we got to get a lot more active doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. I've never thought about what I'm doing. I've just felt compelled.
yeah,
Something inside me just feels compelled, and it's trying to have this positive impact that ultimately will lead to having a positive impact for students.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what
Yeah.
we've got to do. We got to
Yeah.
go out there and try, make a
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
Yes,
And I'm
absolutely.
meeting a lot of people. This podcast has been so much fun. I am meeting people who are doing. They're
Yes.
they're driving innovation and yeah, and sometimes it's a rough road. It
Yes, it
doesn't
is.
all work well in the first
No,
iteration, right?
no.
You gotta keep trying
Yes.
and keep
Yes.
improving and keep evolving and say with AI it's really tough because just when you think you figured it out, there's a new version that can do all kinds of
Exactly.
things and right.
Exactly.
Yep. Right.
Exactly.
Back to
So the more,
survive.
yes, and that's okay. Back
Yeah.
to survive, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Exactly. All right.
Mm.
Any other comments? Anything we didn't talk about you were hoping we would talk about?
I think that was quite comprehensive, and I'm so glad that you picked up on the survive, strive, thrive, arrive model, because that's been the most popular, I would say, with
Hmm.
all educators that I meet. We
Yeah.
always use that as a little meter stick, to see where everyone is as a faculty and as a
Yep.
department. So yeah, you really
Good.
picked
Yeah.
up on
No, I
some of the
like.
key points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked that framework too. Yeah.
Thank
Good.
you. I want to say thank you, Eric, for connecting. It's been so lovely to have this conversation. And,
Yeah.
we are, I would say, in the minority in terms of our beliefs and in terms of our philosophy as well in education. And
Yep.
it's so lovely to be able to speak to somebody who, is aligned. It's good for us to be exposed to other people who have differing opinions, but,
Yep.
it's lovely to be connected with you.
Good. Well, we will stay connected, and
Yes.
yeah, I'll be watching your work. I'll be
Thank
anxious to see
you.
that next book too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. That was so much fun, and it's incredible how much stuff Jennifer advocates for that I've talked about on this show, and I'm so passionate about also. I love her emphasis on AI as a thought partner, not a replacement for critical thinking skills. And, she also supports um, inquiry-based, student-centered learning experiences. I think this is so important. And, her many years of teaching has also allowed her to remain really well grounded and practical in the advice that she brings as an educational consultant. So she also made this great point about being really skilled at change management, right? As we go through this framework she presented of the survive, strive, thrive, and arrive, right? It's cyclical. We're going to keep coming back. No matter how good we do, we're going to keep ending up in survival mode, and we have to be ready for it. We have to be fearless there and just say, okay, we're back at it again. Let's keep going. And so I thought this was really, really good. She gives us some great practical stuff. So look for her book. I've got a link in the show notes. I've also got some links to some other resources she mentioned during our conversation. So please look for those. All right. I am Eric Byron. Thanks again for listening to the Education Innovators podcast. And to all those education innovators out there, thanks for doing what you do. You are making a difference.